as a general, because it is definitely different than like being involved with regular photography. So I have my activity in here. However, I grabbed some people before the meeting who were kind enough to be my guinea pigs. So you will see some of your wonderful club members and some really lovely poses that I asked everybody to do for us before the meeting. And these are all going to be examples of poses that are maybe not the best poses. It's loading. It'll come up, my computer's just slow. Of poses that maybe aren't the best ones to do, but are ones that like I see people doing in convention hallways all the time, and it kills me a little bit inside. So here's a great photo of Holly. We're not going to talk about what's wrong with these necessarily right now. We're going to come back to these, but we're just going to go through them. There's Jenna, looking fab, looking great. There's me. Here we have Sam.
I don't care what anyone thinks.
Yep.
I'm terrified.
We've got Rachel. There's a crazy look in her eyes. I don't know if you can tell. It's great. It's great up close.
Love it.
Here we've got Logan. We've got a couple.
Hammer down.
Okay, so that's all for those. So poses that maybe don't work so well. That was the activity. Okay, so before we get into the actual posing bit, I'm going to start with, first off, like, so you have a nice costume and you take photos of it. How, in God's name, do you find a photographer? There are tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of ways to do this. Not included on the slide, but first and foremost is the club. I'm a photographer. I know we have lots of other photographers in the club. I know a lot of photographers as well, just, word of mouth. Recommendations if people are ever interested in stuff, and like local photographers as well. There's also browsing social media or Facebook. There is actually a Midwest cosplayer and photography connection group on Facebook. That's literally cosplayers and photographers in the Midwest for the sole purpose of networking and getting together. There's also word of mouth recommendations, which is, I guess, kind of at the club, just asking around. Obviously there's at convention opportunities as well. I know at Dice Show last year, Alyssa was like, just a guy walked up with a camera and was like, hey, I'm a photographer and I like your costume, you want to do some shoots? And she was like, sure, and she ended up with a bunch of really nice photos. I ended up friends with the guy actually because I shot with him the next morning. He's really cool. So it happens. So once you figure out a photographer, then what, basically? If you have a lot of options, it's always good to browse portfolios. Every photographer has a different style, different way of editing. People have personal preferences, you don't have to like how everybody does their photos, so that's okay. Then if you're actually interested in shooting, get in touch with somebody. Obviously, there are a lot of things to consider when you're asking about doing a photo shoot, like how long you can expect the shoot itself to run, when or how do you pay if they're charging, how many photos you can expect to get back is a huge one. Some photographers will shoot for an hour and you'll get 3 photos back. Some photographers will shoot for an hour and you will get 25 photos back. It all depends on a person-to-person basis. Will they shoot duos or groups? If you have a couple cosplay, will they shoot both of you? Are they only interested in shooting one person? Shooting groups is exhausting, so a lot of people don't do it. Or is there an extra charge, perhaps, for shooting extra people? Turnaround time. I know photographers that take literally months to get photos out, but their photos are absolutely phenomenal, and it's worth the wait. I know personally, my turnaround time varies from like a week to like 2 months. Because I am a student and a cosplayer, and I have a job, and you know what I mean. There are other factors that contribute to slowing down how quickly I can get photos back to somebody. And also, can I bring a friend or a helper? If you have a really complicated costume, you might have like a handler with you, or even if you're just in a simple costume, maybe you just want a friend to come with to say, oh, your wig cap is showing, or, oh, I can see your skirt, I might want to fix that. Those kind of things to take into consideration.
Sometimes you help with holding up the light.
But sometimes you lay face down on the floor of Dice Show and you hold flashes, external flashes, like Jenna did.
Okay, so additionally, when you're like picking a photographer, you want to look for there's like some quote unquote red flags for like good photographers and not so good photographers. One of the things is back on the other slide, if they don't let you bring a friend or a helper, that should be the biggest red flag ever, and you should not shoot with them. You know, it's very unprofessional to disregard your model's safety, all of that stuff. So a not so good photographer might be kind of rude about that. Even if the person comes in jeans and a t-shirt, you know, they shouldn't be like, I don't want to shoot these people. Well, no, you're not gonna. So, a good photographer will have some direction or posing tips. A lot of photographers work with a lot of people, especially at conventions. So if they're completely clueless about what to, you know, or if you don't know how to pose for your character, or if you're being too masculine or too feminine, if you're cosplaying or something, you should have somebody that can like help you out with that. They might have some pose ideas in mind. A lot of photographers have like a style that they like to shoot like pretty gowns in because, oh, they like to get the whole thing, or they like to get like shooting up a little bit or down. That's fine. And then a good photographer will always turn the camera around occasionally, maybe not after every shot, but you know, just to show you how things are going. You can always ask. If they refuse, also a red flag. They should be really polite and professional, and this is something that's like, I don't know, kind of subjective. So if you are being made to be uncomfortable, you should let them know, or if, you know, they're saying stuff or telling you to do things you don't want to do, you should feel comfortable enough to tell them that you don't want to. They should keep in contact with you. They should tell you, you know, you can expect your photos here, I'm going to wait for you, you know, I'm going to wait for you by the fountain, all sorts of things like that. You shouldn't completely lose communication with them after you get your, you know, after you have your shoot and then get your photos 3 months later. That's not very professional. And then they will let you bring a friend along for your own personal safety and then as like a helper. A not so good photographer will kind of just point the camera at you and say go, which makes, you know, the photographer feel kind of weird. Also, you feel really weird because you're kind of just standing there like, hello. They don't communicate. That goes along with giving you no direction. They have no expected turnaround or projected number of finished photos. This is a problem because, you know, what's your time worth? What's your money worth to you? You want to know what you're going to get out of the shoot. The subjective part is if they have a large watermark, don't work with them. Some people, it's kind of a personal choice and their photos are still really good even though their watermark is half of the image. Sometimes if you pay more or if you know, are doing Patreon or something, they will give you unwatermarked photos, but typically you have to definitely pay for those ones. And that's something you can discuss photographer to photographer. And a not so good photographer will give you every single photo they took. That's a big problem. Letting you kind of pick and choose what goes up means that they're probably giving you like 100 to 200 photos that they took in the whole shoot, and then you're having to pick everything, and then they probably skimped on editing all of them because they wanted to give you so many, so it's kind of a trade-off.
So as mentioned, red flags. Your personal safety is obviously the most important thing if you're shooting with somebody, especially if you've never met the photographer or you've never worked with them before. Most photographers will try and make you comfortable. We'll let you, as mentioned, bring a friend or two. Last iShow, as mentioned, when Jenna was laying face down on the floor holding a flash, that was because I said, hey, I'm shooting with this guy. I have never met him before. I have just messaged him on Facebook because he said he was taking shots. I'm not comfortable going alone. Will you come with me? And she said, sure. And it was great. She ended up, you know, holding equipment for him and helping him out.
And I also got to meet him because I had a photo shoot.
And she had a photo shoot the next day. So it worked out. Photographers are also check your personal comfort level. Hey, can I get in really close for a portrait shot? Or, you know, are you okay if I come in from this angle because, you know, it might show down your shirt a little bit and I don't know if you're comfortable with that. Or, you know, just generally checking, making sure that you're okay with what they're doing and that they're not overstepping any bounds. Also about, like, you know, maybe the photographer's like, oh, you're in a really skimpy costume, do you want to pose a little bit more, like, sexy? Or, you know, communication, basically. And always ask before touching you or your props. I always, as a photographer, if I notice somebody's wig is falling off or their costume's out of place, I say, hey, your wig's falling off. I don't just go in and fix it. If somebody's just going in to touch your costume or your props, that's a no-no. I mean, best of intentions, but you don't want to go there, basically. Trust your gut, always. If you don't feel comfortable, you're not obligated to stay. Even if you've paid You know what I mean? Sometimes your personal comfort and safety is more important than $30 or $40 that you paid for a shoot. Communicate boundaries beforehand. You know, just make sure you're not obligated to let them invade your personal space. Hey, I'm wearing a costume with a really short skirt. Can we just make sure we don't get any upskirt shots during the shoot? And you're not obligated to do any poses or photos. Obviously, as Alyssa said, the biggest red flag is when they don't let you see the back of the camera, especially if they straight up refuse to let you see the back of the camera. There's like no reason that I could think of, I mean literally no reason that I would never show somebody the back of the camera on the shots that I was just taking, unless they were something that I knew the person wouldn't want to see, something that would make them uncomfortable that they hadn't agreed upon. So just things to keep in mind.
Can I say one thing for communicating boundaries? Also, if something about the age of your character or something along those lines makes you uncomfortable and makes you want to set boundaries, that is something, I just had experience with this today. I'm shooting a 14-year-old, and so I told the photographer, I'm 21, but she's 14, keep that in mind. So that is definitely like one of those other boundaries that you need to communicate. Is this the fun one? Okay.
So, moving on to posing.
Okay.
I knew that was coming. I knew that was coming.
Okay, prepping for the camera. Okay, this is me as a photographer speaking to all of you because this stuff drives me fucking bonkers. Do as much work as you possibly can before you even step foot in the camera. It will make your photographer's life easier. It will make your life easier. The fewer amount of times I have to say during a shoot, I'll fix that in post, or I'll fix that in post-processing, the better. You shouldn't ever say those words during a photo shoot. It happens just because stuff happens, but you want to do as much as you possibly can before the shoot to make sure that you are ready to look fabulous on the camera. Makeup, you can go over the top, you can go big. Makeup translates, the bigger and the more over the top and the brighter colors and everything that you go is going to translate better on camera. This doesn't mean necessarily you have to go crazy with your makeup for every costume or that you even have to wear makeup. You're not obligated to wear makeup ever, but it will translate really well on camera if you go more dramatic. Costume fixes. Things like finishing your seams, hiding your blemishes, stealing your props. Iron your costume. Can you tell this is a berserk button for me? Iron your costume. It is so noticeable when you don't iron your costume and then you take photos of it. So noticeable. So noticeable. Please iron your costume. Prop fixes, as I mentioned, make sure you're painted, you're sealed, your details are on, you don't have hot glue strings all over everything. Etc. Blemishes, super noticeable. The camera will pick up all of your flaws and all of your blemishes, which is unfortunate, but that's just how it works.
Makes me cry.
Yeah, it makes you cry. Consider bringing an emergency kit. I have Con Mom. I bring these kinds of things to every convention and every photo shoot that I ever do, including club photo shoots. So things like hairspray, wig combs, safety pins, regular straight pins, fashion tape, eyelash glue, makeup for touch-ups, setting spray, etc. Anything that you can think of that you might need to quick fix or touch up, something that could go wrong. Not a bad idea to bring it. And then always be punctual and be polite. Somebody is taking time out of their day to take your photo, and then they're taking time out of their days to edit your photos. As if they have a job or if they have school, you know, that's extra free time of theirs that they're losing. So just respect the photographer's time, respect your time. Make sure you always say thank you and please. It's that simple.
Alright, so knowing your character, practice in presentation. Keep the personality of your character in mind. Keep things like gender in mind, age, stuff like that. Make sure that you have a couple, like 2 to 3, 4 maybe, easily recognizable and signature poses. That is something that's like, I don't know, it's a really big like pet peeve of mine when like all the schoolgirl cosplayers do this or something. Because, I mean, okay, schoolgirl cosplays branch from like Boku no Hero to like Sailor Moon. So you've got so many different like aspects of this character that you can express in a pose. You can take things from screen grabs, whatever, and practice your poses and like how your face looks beforehand. I guarantee that you're gonna feel really silly looking in the mirror and like pointing or like bending yourself, but like it's gonna look good and you'll recognize how things are supposed to feel. And yeah, it'll work.
So as mentioned, signature poses and silhouettes. Go big, go iconic. Gynex pose. Everybody knows Gynex pose. I'm rewatching Gurren Lagann. I'm slightly influenced. Gynex pose. Everybody knows yours is the drill that will pierce the heavens. And like sunrise stance, which is in the far right corner. I did research on this actually on common anime poses, and that's called sunrise stance, where your weapon is leveled at the camera at a dramatic angle (TM), and your character is in the background holding it. Everybody knows in the name of the moon I will punish you. The Sailor Moon pose. JoJo posing, obviously dramatic, over the top, creates a really dynamic silhouette. So the silhouette rule is basically if I blacked this out, would it still be an interesting shape? And the answer is yes. Because what is this?
Besides the hair and the giant
However, you do want to keep in mind the character you're shooting, the location you're shooting, etc. Obviously, it's not always appropriate. I wouldn't JoJo pose in this. I'm not sure I would Gynex pose in this either, because Gynex posing is for being tough. There's a right pose for right situations and locations as well. I don't know if you'd want to JoJo pose in a library. I don't know.
I would.
JoJo characters, do they pose in libraries? Who knows? Just keep it in mind.
So here's another thing of practicing. Practice a ton. Take selfies in your costume. I find it's a really cool way to also get into character and to kind of just learn how your face feels. Stand in front of the mirror in the full getup. That's makeup, hair, and all. Make faces. Check out your costume. Is this gonna bunch strange if I do this?
Am I gonna?
Are you gonna see up my
if
skirt?
I do this?
Are you gonna see up my skirt if I go like this? Think about stuff like that. Check how mobile you are in it too. If you can't JoJo pose in something, I was trying to backbend in a corset. Don't do that. If you stretch too hard, are you gonna bust your boning? If you stick your leg out really far, are you gonna show everybody your skirt? Not a super good idea. Look online if you need ideas. You can reenact fan art. That's always really cool. Example A. This is still one of my favorite things ever. See what other cosplayers have done. Another thing, pull in a Rocky, look at a statue, and just pose like that. I'm sorry, that's the JoJo. Just pose like a painting, pose like a statue. Who cares? People will recognize it, and that's what'll kind of make it fun. And practice with all your props too. And make sure that you look like you're actually holding your prop, and it's not just I have a stick. Things like a camera, have your finger on the button, or have your your finger looking like it's about to go on the trigger, or hold a bat properly. Things like that.
If you're using a gun. Trigger safety.
Yes.
Gun prop even, because you never put your finger on the trigger unless you're intending to pull the gun. Pull the gun. You don't put your finger on the trigger unless you're intending to pull it. So your finger should hover. Sorry,
yes.
Small aside. I have to include this because it drives me nuts when I see people put their finger on the trigger and it's like, you are not going to fire that. Your finger should not be on the
You're going to shoot your foot. Don't. Practice.
Exaggerating and using your whole body. There's kind of a running theme here about going big and going over the top and exaggerating, and that is because you are taking a 3D object, which is your body, and you are compressing it into a two-dimensional form, camera. The camera adds 20 pounds is the phrase everybody knows. Well, that's because, you're compressing something that you're used to seeing in 3D with the naked eye into something that is a two-dimensional object, and that transition has to take certain shortcuts and you lose visual information. So what feels really over the top in person is gonna look nice on camera. You want to use your whole body if you're taking whole body shots, obviously. If somebody's only shooting you from the waist up, it doesn't matter what your feet are doing. For example, if you are doing a full body shots, you do want to make sure that you're thinking about what your whole body is doing. Idle hands, dead hands, is one of the biggest things that I notice. People who forget to pose with their hands, and then your hands just flop. They're just kind of there. They're idle, and they're dead, and it will ruin a photo. Do something with your hands. Put it on your wig, put it by your face, plant it on your hip. You know, wave it at the camera, do something with your hands. So like this is me, you know, it's not like a crazy pose, but both of my hands are doing something. Same thing with Rachel's picture in the top right. You know, she's just got them set on her shoulders. Even the photo on the bottom right, you can see, it's kind of hard to see because it's dark, but you know, Jenna's hand is just linked over the wrist of her other hand, so it's there, it's not dead, she's posed it. Same thing with Rachel, she has one hand on her knee, she has the other hand doing the same thing, kind of planted over her elbow. So there's some movement happening. And then the rule of thirds for full body shots. 3/4 angles are really flattering. So instead of facing the camera dead on, if you angle yourself a little bit and then pose, it's going to make you look slimmer, it's going to give you the better angle for the camera. It's a good angle.
Yes, and there's also this talk about like the flow and having dynamic poses. So basically what this means is if you look at things like this, and this photo here, they're like sticking their hips out, and you know, the legs are doing something, the hands are doing something, like there is something going on in every part of these shots. So, you know, also just kind of make sure that the pose feels at least moderately natural, looks at least moderately natural. I know we've told you go big or go home, but sometimes like people can tell when there's like strain in your neck or in your shoulders while you're like doing something weird. So kind of just be moderately natural with these things. Don't look stiff or have, you know, unnatural angles. Don't focus so much on like your hands or your feet. What I was told by a lot of photographers is like, give me your wrist, let your hand go, okay, good. Because when you start thinking about how your hands should go, then you get your hands doing stuff like this, and you don't know why, and it's just because you're putting too much like focus on your hands, and you know, sometimes that happens. And then just go with what feels right. So if you're, you know, this will feel natural, this will feel kind of awkward to be near the camera, and then this will just be like, where am I? Like, so just think, kind of think about, be aware of where your body is in space, and you know, but don't think about it too much.
Action poses. So as a general rule of thumb, action poses are more difficult than you expect them to be. So there are some more easy ones. So things like the superhero landing. Everybody knows the superhero landing. You know, cloth Deadpool. He did the superhero landing. Like Iron Man. So that's a pretty static pose. You can just kind of hit the superhero pose, stay put. Looks really cool. Things like, I call this the sticks my leg out real far pose because I don't know what else to call it, but I see people doing it all the time and it looks really cool. So, you know, getting down, low to the ground, sticking out one of your leggies, it's going to give you nice long lines, your legs are going to look really long. Yeah,
it's hard.
Don't get stuck. Yeah, it's harder than it looks. But it looks really cool, so stick your leggy out. Jumping poses require really great timing and the right equipment to get right by the photographer. So this jumping photo turned out pretty nicely, but you can see her foot's like an inch off the ground. So the illusion is ruined just a little bit because you know she's that close. However, everything else is really nice, so sometimes you just have to make compromises with photos. Also dramatic flips, so things like dramatic hair flips, dramatic cape flipping, so on and so forth. They can also be hard to time, or they may involve shopping somebody's hand who's holding your cape out of the frame. The picture on top right, fun fact, totally natural. That was the wind, because that was taken at ASIN from last year, and it was windy and awful on Friday of ASIN. So that was just the natural wind doing that, and totally use the elements to your advantage if you can. If it's a super windy day, turn into the wind and let your cape flap or let your wig flap and look majestic as fuck, by all means, because it's difficult to do it artificially. So just, you know, surprisingly hard to do if you don't time it correctly or if you can't get somebody's hand out of the shot necessarily. Jack can tell you at GeekCon we tried to take like 8 dramatic coat flapping photos and like none of them turned out, so sometimes it just doesn't work out.
So use your head head when you pose in more ways than one. Make sure that your head is positioned so that you look kind of engaged. And what that means is, Mark up here, he's just holding his wizard wand, pointing at something, and he's looking off at something, and you can tell his focus is on something. It's not, I'm looking off to the side, I'm looking, down at the ground into space. There is an angle at which you have too much white or too little white on your eyes, and he hit about the sweet spot of you can tell where his gaze is going, but you don't know what he's looking at, so that's pretty cool. This is me in a weird way, but there's almost a little too much white, but at the same time I look a little dubious, so it's kind of using the too much effect to create a different effect with the shot. You are allowed to look directly into the camera. You are allowed to look directly into the camera. That's not like a complete no-no. It can be very intimidating or sexy, or something that's very much, I'm looking at you, viewer, I'm going to kill you or kiss you or whatever. You can look into distance. The trick is middle distance, so you don't want to be like too high up or too low down. You kind of want to be like in the middle. Focus on something stationary. This helps a lot, especially if they're like, okay, keep holding that pose. So if you're looking at like a random point on like the ceiling, it's better to focus on like, okay, the corner of the wall over there or the light, as opposed to there's a point on the wall and I think it's there. Be aware of your mouth. You wouldn't have like a villain smile unless that's their thing. You wouldn't have a sad character smile unless you wanted to be funny. You can smile, that's okay. It's a photo. You might be happy someone's taking a photo of you. Keep your lips kind of parted, kind of like a pout. And then kind of the trick is you put your lips together, part them a little, and exhale. That creates a very like natural looking, kind of stoic-esque face.
Neutral model face.
Yeah, it's neutral model face. And then turn towards the light source unless like you want to get something that's kind of freaky in shadows or you want to be backlit or something. But typically make sure that people can see your costume and, all the makeup you spend so much time on.
Okay, so posing with props. You always want to avoid posing your prop directly at the camera. So if you guys remember Rachel's really excellent photo that we showed you at the beginning of the workshop, she had her prop pointed literally dead straight on at the camera, and you can't tell what the prop is, you can't see half of her costume, and it's just a mess overall. So you always want to angle your prop slightly in one direction or another. Show off your prop. If you have a prop, that's cool. Put it in photos, show it off, especially if you made it. Use your item. If you have a weapon, beat somebody up with your weapon. Hit the photographer. Don't really hit your photographer. But like the, photo on the bottom is a really good example of like, oh, I'm gonna bonk you, and you can feel it coming, but it's not quite there. And you can still see exactly what the prop is, and you can tell what's going on in the photo. Jenna's photo too with the scissor blade, I can tell exactly what's going on there. It's angled just enough that I can tell what I'm looking at. And then if you don't have a prop necessarily, not every character has like a weapon or a shield or something super important. Keep costume points are totally okay as props as well. Things like hats or gloves or jewelry. You can take things on and off. You can hold things. Don't just have a notebook in the top photo. Hey, part of a prop. Like for this costume, I had maybe considered taking like pulling on a glove or pulling off a glove. As like a, yeah, I'm ready to go kind of thing. So get crafty, get creative. You could be dramatically flapping your own cape, or if you have like a huge fluffy skirt, you could be holding up your skirt, looking really cute. Go crazy. Okay, so this is activity take 2. We're using your knowledge that you've just learned from this amazing amazing workshop. We're gonna take your photo of posing. Hooray!
Yeah!
So, if you would be so kind as to turn the front lights back on. Please.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have, you don't have to participate if you really don't want to, but I highly encourage you to participate. We're just gonna have you come up to the front, in front of this plain, white, neutral background, and you're just gonna pose for us. We're gonna take a photo, and then we're just gonna quick go through everybody's photos and say, here's what you did great! Or, I can't see your arm in this photo. Are you sure you didn't amputate it? Maybe work on that next time. So, any volunteers? You can Yay!